And we will just jump right in. First of all, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our June town hall. We are really excited about this one where art meets science. One of the things that we'll talk about is unveiling an art book, which we had the honor of working on with our partner, Abeona Therapeutics, to create really a one-of-a-kind art book inspired by the creativity of this community. So we asked the EB community. Are there any artists out there that want to share their art? And we were pleasantly and happily overwhelmed that there are so many artists in the community that wanted to share their paintings, their drawings, their poems, their reflection, their poetry, of their journey, with not only EB, but their lives and their stories. So we are just so thankful that the community always shows up, but particularly for this unique initiative, right? To share voices, to share art, and to share stories. So this town hall bridges the art and the science and hope with progress. We're so grateful to see so many of you. I think, the purpose of these town halls is always to bring together the community in every sense of the word, bring together the medical community. I see researchers on the line, I see clinicians on the line, bring together caregivers and individuals living with EB, bring together the biotech and pharma world. And I see those folks represented on the call and bring together our supporters and philanthropists. And I see many of you on the call as well. So that is the purpose of these town halls, really to bring us all together. We are honored to have some renowned speakers and just incredible people, incredible human beings with Emily, Laura, and Dr. Poller, who you will meet just shortly. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all three. They have so much to contribute, and their voices, their stories, their accomplishments are so powerful. So it feels like we've got an all-star lineup of heavyweights with us here today. So thank you all for joining. Just the format. As you guys know, a little bit of an agenda of town halls. We try to bring multiple voices, not only to the call, to the town hall, but actually as presenters and speakers. So you will hear from individuals living with EB. You'll hear from world-leading experts, which, Dr. Poller is always very humble, but you are, Dr. Poller, a world-leading expert. So we'll start with Emily Boros-Rausch, and she will talk about her experiences with what art has meant to her and her journey and how it's helped her share her story. Then we'll hear from Dr. Poller, who will give us a clinical perspective on ZEVASKYN, the therapeutic from Abeona, which marked the latest FDA approval. And congratulations to the incredible hard work, Dr. Poller, that you and your team have done to open up your site at Northwestern as a ZEVASKYN center in being able to actually, administer the surgical application of ZEVASKYN. And last but certainly not least, Lara Peck will talk about her personal experience of going through the ZEVASKYN treatment and going back to being part of the clinical trial, and her experience of what this means for her and potentially can mean for others. Feel free, as you guys know, the whole point of a town hall is to drop any questions in the chat as we go along, any thoughts, any comments. Our team will pick those up. The speakers will have access to those. So, we don't want you to have to wait until the end and you forgot your question, you forgot your idea. This is meant to be engaging. This is meant to be for you and for the community. So you can drop those questions right in the chat. If you feel open about the question, if it's a question that you'd rather send privately, the amazing Allison Bolshagetigan on our team, you can just send her a private message and she'll make sure she gets to the speakers or catalogs that question so it can be asked at the end. And then, of course, at the very end, we'll do a Q&A and make sure we have time for that. You can save your questions until then, and speak or raise your Zoom hand or put it in the chat. Or if you felt you wanted to ask it earlier, we'll make sure that we bring those questions to the very end and open it up to the whole group. So that is the format. Before I introduce our amazing speakers, another part of the town halls is just to give an update to each of you on EBRP and our progress to date and what we plan in the near and distant future. So for those that don't know, EBRP was founded by a group of parents whose children had EB, along with Jill and Eddie Vedder of the band Pearl Jam. And we had one big audacious goal, which is to accelerate treatments and one day a cure for EB as quickly as possible. What progress have we made to date? We've become the largest funder of EB on planet Earth. We've raised more than $80 million to fund 180 projects in more than 22 different countries. We've seen 3 FDA-approved treatments in the last 3 years be accelerated and going from around 2 clinical trials to more than 50 today means that we've seen a 25x increase on clinical trials, but our work is not done, nor will our work never be done until we have more treatments for all subtypes with the ultimate goal of a cure or a curative or definitive therapy for all those living with EB, regardless of subtype. We are a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, but one thing that we've always been proud of is running the organization like a business. So every penny that we put out the door is under a unique and innovative venture philanthropy model, which just means we don't just write checks and hope for the best. We actually invest in science and we invest in projects. So one day, if those projects are commercialized, the revenue share comes back to the foundation to invest in more research until ultimately we achieve our goals. When we think about that progress, from 2 clinical trials to more than 50, really seeing the landscape grow, an important part of it is, what our greatest hope had been, right? Which is to get approved treatments and to continue to fight for more approved treatments, continue to fight for access globally, so patients around the world have access to these treatments and know that, while the 3 approved treatments are so helpful in the sense of having options for patients and families, continuing to build that portfolio over time. So one of those treatments that you'll hear more about today is Abeona Therapeutics ZEVASKYN. EBRP was very honored to be a very early investor in this science with Dr. Jean Tang at Stanford and her team. Really seen, and I see some representatives from Abeona on the phone, seen that organization grow and run clinical trials and ultimately get that FDA approval, and now in the process of rolling that out in clinics across America. It's very complex as far as the expertise needed. So again, acknowledging Dr. Poller and her team for being one of the first sites to really be able to administer that. So I just wanted to thank the team at Abeona. We're very grateful for the partnership. Not only with ZEVASKYN, but your commitment to the EB community and showing up time after time, whether it be events. This team at Abeona did a plunge, at their global headquarters in Cleveland. Everybody from the CEO to all staff members jumping in that freezing cold water, town halls, community events, really, really showing up. And one embodiment of that is what we started the call with, of really coming with a creative idea of showcasing the talent and creativity of the community with an art book. So, Abeona really knew that this would be an important way to let creative expression be felt in the EB community, a new way that we could really highlight, the voices and the creative power of this community. So, without further ado, I would like to present this art book and the artists that really made this possible. So we are proud to report that we were blown away by the response to this. So if you were on the call and you contributed to the art, we thank you. It's been really fun, over the last couple weeks. Of course, the first recipients of these art books have been those artists that contributed to it. So we made sure that everybody got their copy, and we've seen the unboxing videos when people open these and what it means to them. I've got one sitting on my desk here. So we encourage everybody to get your art book. It's beautiful. It's kind of coffee table book size. The stories will move you to tears of joy, quite frankly, of seeing the artistic expression of this group and the way that all the artists here were able to communicate their stories in such an artistic way. So we were proud to have 30 artists from 10 different countries. They created more than 60 pieces of art across 9 different mediums, and that made just a beautiful palette and diversified portfolio of what art meant to this book. So you can check out the full art book if you haven't seen it yet online. I think there's a URL on the screen, or we'll drop it in the chat, so you can start to view this and experience the beautiful art of the community. And we'll have some speakers on this call that will not only talk about contributing to the book, but also talk about what art means to them and why it is so important. So you can get your copy. If you want your physical hard copy, if you're old school like myself and actually like having a book or a newspaper, something to put on your desk, we'll make sure you guys all have the information to get your copy. Okay, now we are on to the important part. Let's meet our speakers. It is my honor to introduce, and I will just double check to make sure she got in the line. Was Emily able to join us?
Not yet, so I think we'll switch our order a little bit, but we can introduce all of our speakers.
Okay, I will introduce everybody, and then Laura, if you are okay to go first, and we will put a hope and a prayer and some tech support to make sure that Emily can join us as well. So our speakers today, we are going to introduce
You
as soon
want to
as you.
watch the end of the movie?
What's that? Oh no, maybe that wasn't directed at me. Thanks. We are honored to have Emily Boros-Rausch, a Toronto-born, Moncton-based artist whose work explores the intersection of textiles, painting, design, and personal narrative. Her artistic journey has been shaped by her travels, her experiences working with communities around the world, and her journey navigating life with EB. These days, she works full-time as a visual artist from her home studio, recently focusing on creating large-scale abstract paintings that incorporate textiles she collected during her travels. Next, we will have Lara Peck. Lara is a mom of three, a special education teacher, certified Wilson dyslexia practitioner, and an advocate within the EB community, a very strong advocate. Living with recessive dystrophic EB has required Lara to learn resilience, independence, and determination, and she credits her family for helping shape her approach to both health and life. In 2017, Lara participated in an early clinical trial involving ZEVASKYN, and that experience strengthened her commitment to advocacy and to helping advance awareness and progress for individuals living with EB. Last but certainly not least, the amazing and heroic and Herculean Dr. Amy Paller, who's a researcher and clinician specializing in pediatric dermatology. She serves as the Walter J. Hamlin Professor of Dermatology and Pediatrics and chair of the Department of Dermatology at Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. She directs the NIH-funded Skin Biology and Diseases Resource-Based Center and practices at Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, where she focuses her work on genetic and inflammatory skin disorders in children, including EP. She has led more than 130 clinical trials related to pediatric genetic and inflammatory skin disorders, contributing significantly to advancing new treatments, understanding skin diseases, and capturing the outcomes reported by patients and parents that critically impact quality of life. Dr. Paller, thank you again. Not only the bio doesn't even do you justice, despite all those esteemed trials. Dr. Paller serves on our scientific advisory board, so has guided our research funding for more than a decade, and also as those rare clinician researchers that is just such a great human being and is able to connect on many, many levels. So, Dr. Paller, as always, it is an honor to have you here. Okay, we are going to switch the order a little bit, and I'm confident we'll get our friend from Canada across the technological border, so to speak. But in the meantime, before we do that, I'm going to start with Laura. So thank you so much, Laura, and I will pass it to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time today. Yes, my name is Lara Peck. I was born with RDEB in 1971. And when I was born, doctors were unsure if I would survive. Even though my father was a surgeon and my mother was a nurse, and having had all the resources, there was very little understanding of this condition or what to do about it at the time. And growing up, wound care and pain and the daily realities of RDEB were just simply part of life. I didn't know anything different. My family was very athletic, and I just found different things to do. Wound changes lasted a long time, and school was kind of rough because I was absent a lot. I had lots of wounds. I slept very little. Plus, there were those mean kids to deal with. And at the time, I was also learning English. My brother Hamilton helped me greatly with the bullies. And after a while, really no one wanted to mess with either one of us. At the time, I remember wishing desperately for a pain medication besides baby aspirin. As I got older, my symptoms became a little bit more challenging as there was nothing to do about the blistering in the esophagus. And what we later learned were strictures developing. But I was determined to live as normal life as I possibly could. There were days at a time where I had a huge blister in my throat, and I had to carefully drink something just to keep my strength up. And one time my mom actually just blended peas and had me drink that. It was terrible. Eventually, in high school, we found a hospital in Birmingham that could do the dilations. And with some surprise, I graduated from high school. I was able to attend college and later build a career as a teacher. What I really wanted in life and the thing doctors all told me would not happen is now my greatest accomplishment, becoming a mother to 3 children. There were many times I wondered whether I would actually live through long enough to see them grow up because of some of the large wounds and the post-pregnancy complications. But today they're all wonderful and healthy adults. As a single mother, I balanced wound care, work, and parenting. Many mornings started before everyone else woke up because dressing changes and preparing for the day just couldn't wait. I relied on my faith and the support of my family and friends to keep me moving forward. For much of my life, I accepted that RDEB would simply mean daily pain and constant wound management. Like many in our community, I became accustomed to the wounds reopening and accepting the status quo. We used to get the Deborah newsletter in the mail when I was young, and my mom and I would look at it together. There were occasionally articles about gene therapy, and we both wondered whether or not this would actually be a reality in my lifetime. And it was definitely my hope back then. As I look back now, I often think about how my parents would have viewed this progress that we're seeing today because they were both in the medical field. I know they would have understood the significance of research and the emerging treatments. Another reality, the risk of skin cancer must also have been on my mother's mind. My mom was constantly trying different things to encourage faster healing or prevent new sores from developing. Some of them I hated at the time, like sitting in a lounge chair in the sun or being wrapped at night with Vaseline and bandages. But she was always searching for anything that might help. I often think about how difficult it must have been for my parents to wonder not only whether I would survive childhood, but also what the future would hold decades later. And that's why a hope for a cure should be our line of sight while work is being done to achieve that. Mom would have understood the significance of progress not only as a way to provide relief from the day-to-day struggles of RDEB, but also as a way to potentially change an entire course of a life. The significance of preventing years of chronic wounds and reducing the long-term risks that come with them was not lost on her. As a 10-year-old, I knew these things about her, but as a parent myself now, I understand that perspective even more deeply. More than 10 years ago, I developed a large wound on the upper third of my back. It wouldn't heal, and it seemed to grow and shrink and grow or migrate toward the other side. But after several years, it still remained open. It drained my energy and it seemed to take healing away from other wounds, causing them to stay open longer as well. My health was deteriorating, and I gradually stopped being able to do the things that any parent wants to do with their children. Eventually, I had to concede some defeat and take a leave of absence from work. At that time, I didn't know anything about the clinical trials, and my mindset was simply to rest, eat well, avoid infection, and push through this difficult phase. Then, during one of my dermatology appointments, my doctor took me into his office instead of the examination room, and he said he had something he wanted to discuss. He asked if I would be interested in participating in a clinical trial, and I was immediately excited. He said that was really good because he had already signed me up. Going through the ZEVASKYN trial turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made, regardless of the travel, regardless of the procedure itself, because living with a massive wound on your back is even harder. If I developed another difficult to heal area, I would choose it again without hesitation. My family and friends all stepped up to help me with everything at home because we all understood the significance of what this treatment could mean. Over the years since the surgery, I became more involved in the EB community and began sharing my story because I realized that receiving ZEVASKYN was absolutely not just about me feeling better. It was about giving those who may have hesitation or uncertainty about trying such a forward-thinking treatment a sense of hope. I realized that advocacy was not only important because it gave me a purpose and connection with others who truly understood this journey, but also because of what it could mean for future generations. ZEVASKYN has helped me choose a new fork in the road that can also encourage others to take that same leap of faith. I regained the ability to participate fully in life again. Over time, my children noticed how much more involved I became in the day-to-day moments and activities that I had struggled to participate in before. I have never looked back, and I never take it for granted the opportunities I have to participate and be involved in things that I was unable to do for so long. Losing those parts of my life had become mentally almost as difficult as the physical challenges themselves. Today, I still manage my RDEB every day. I still face the challenges, infections, the wound care, and uncertainty. However, the area on my back remains completely healed all of these years later. It has never reopened, and I consider it normal skin because I no longer have to think about it or manage it at all. My overall health has also improved because my body was no longer struggling to keep up with healing such a massive area. My immune system became stronger, and despite being around children at school every day, I rarely get sick. But I also have lived long enough to witness and be a part of the progress that I never thought I would see in my lifetime. This has changed my perspective and reminded me that things can improve. It gave me a power back and allowed me to choose something greater than myself. RDEB takes a great deal away from us, but it has also given things that I could not have had otherwise: resilience, strength, gratitude, patience, and determination. My story is not currently one of being cured. My story is of perseverance, motherhood, service, advocacy, hope. My aspiration is that future generations living with EB will face fewer challenges, more options, and greater opportunities than those of us who came before them, and quite possibly a cure. Thank you so much.
Honestly, Laura, oh, thanks to you, and thank you for sharing your story. But often a hero is defined as somebody that courageously overcomes the odds, but also acts on behalf of others. And as you said, your life has been defined by perseverance, right? From the moment that you were a child, and certainly, what your family instilled in you, but defying the odds, right? To be a mother of three, to be a parent, to act on behalf of others, right? As an advocate for this community, but also to be a special educator, which I think is one of the most important jobs in the world, but also to enter a clinical trial. By definition and in name, there's uncertainty at that point. That's the process of medicine. So to take that risk, on behalf of the community, right? To be one of the first in on that is just tremendous bravery. So thank you for your heroism. Thank you for your perseverance, to use your words, and thank you for sharing your story with us today. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, next up, it is again my honor to have Dr. Poller with us here today, and really we thought it would be really helpful for the town hall, really just to have a conversation. So I've got some questions prepared for Dr. Poller that we thought would be helpful for the community to hear. But again, just a reminder, please, put your questions in the chat. Knowing at the end of this town hall today, it'll really be open up to the community. And again, not only thank you, Dr. Poller, for your service and your brilliance and your intellect and the research and clinical expertise you brought, but also the ability to connect with the community on such a human level. It is a rarity in medicine, and it's certainly one you possess. So thank you again, Dr. Poller, for sharing your time with us today. Maybe just to start, there might be some in the audience who might be unfamiliar with ZEVASKYN. Could we start just by briefly explaining what it is and what's it for?
Sure. And thank you so much for your kind words, Michael. Well, ZEVASKYN is the third FDA-approved product. We're really lucky to have several things that are out there. It was first approved in the end of April in 2025. And it really is, in a way, the first thing we have that could potentially cure, at least cure in the areas where it's applied. So what happens with ZEVASKYN is it's essentially one's own skin. We take biopsies that are sent to the company that makes the ZEVASKYN. They grow out the skin cells called keratinocytes. And once it gets to a certain size, they're able to introduce the gene, the collagen 7 gene, into these keratinocytes, into these skin cells, and then further expand to as many as 12 credit card sizes of basically skin from the person that will now produce a type 7 collagen that will actually work. And they did a lot of studies early on to show that this type of technology will actually lead to a product that in these cells in that area will produce the collagen 7 that's either missing or defective in individuals who have dystrophic EB. And so this is a 25-day process where we'll do a biopsy. It goes in, and about 25 days later, it comes back for our surgeons to do a fairly major procedure in which these up to 12 credit card size, and that's actually a pretty big area, much bigger than what was in the studies themselves, can be put on. I know when we do this, we have 3 surgeons in the room at the same time in the operating room sewing these on as quickly as possible, but it's still a fairly extensive surgery. We can talk more about that. But the bottom line is that these cells from one's own skin are introduced with this gene put in using what's called a virus that is not a virus that infects, but rather a virus that is not active. It can't cause disease, but it allows the delivery, mimicking viruses that can get into our skin and produce genes. So it's a very clever kind of a tool that's being used to introduce into the cell, allow that then to be something that will not be rejected on the basis of immunity because it's your own skin. You don't have to worry about that. And to then have a fairly large area that can be grafted, and it can be done more than once to cover other areas and done serially. And I think the great thing about it is that you don't just have the production of the collagen 7 in this area, but it seems to be very safe. So far, we have not had any evidence of a problem with the virus or cancer. And cancer is something, of course, that everybody worries about with dystrophic EB, with EB in general. And the last thing you'd want is something that could actually increase the risk of cancer, but that hasn't been the case. There hasn't been any evidence of that over time so far. And many of these have gone out for years now since they've been put on. So from a safety standpoint, it really looks to be quite good. And if anything, we would hope that if it would lead to wound healing, you'd have a decreased risk of cancer over time just because of that. The results so far have looked really quite good, and that's what led to the FDA to approve it. We can see good wound healing in the majority of individuals. It does take some time, some good results even 6 weeks out, others taking 3 months or even 6 months out to really see the best results. And what's, I think, most important is the quality of life. We heard that from Lara, right? If you have your own skin put back on that now stops blistering because you have the collagen 7, it's so much more comfortable. So quality of life can be improved, decreased pain, decreased itch. And even though we see results that suggest that only a small percentage have 100% take, the numbers are really quite good. So we're hoping that this will be helpful for lots of patients out there, particularly those who've had large areas that have not healed over long periods of time. And in the studies, I think I read at some point that there was a median of 5 years of skin that's been open before having this kind of a procedure. Now, there are individuals who have large areas that just haven't healed in years. And there are so many in one study, 2/3 actually have skin that opens and closes and opens and closes in the same area. And so there might be a need too for that to be transplanted with something if it's going to prevent that opening and closing, that unpredictability as well. So I think there are a fair number of people out there who could benefit from this. It hasn't been out very long commercially. We just have clinical trials results, so we're going to see how that goes as well. But if this is as successful in the patient work commercially as it's been in trials, I think it'll be very exciting. I will say a few more things. One is that this is not inexpensive. We're talking about more than $3 million just for this up to 12 credit card size grafts. This is a very expensive process to move forward. And then on top of that, of course, there are the costs of doing these grafts, doing the biopsies, and then having the grafting procedure of a few hours, and then being in the hospital for 5 to 10 days, et cetera. So there are costs that probably bring that up to about $4 million, but we've seen that insurance is covering this. Even a patient on Medicaid got recently approved here in Illinois. We have done 5 procedures so far, just in the last few months, so we don't have a long list. We don't have that 6 months yet, or barely hitting for the first ones that 3 months, but we're excited about the process. And everybody with EB is different, but it is for the first time the possibility of having an area that recurrently blisters have a marked reduction in the blisters, the pain, the itch, the infections that go with that.
Dr. Pollard, thank you for so thoroughly describing the process from a medical perspective, from a patient and family perspective, even from an economic perspective. And the process is so innovative, right? Particularly what matters is that result and durability. You talk about numbers like 5 years. To accomplish this, it's an incredibly complex process. I could imagine to actually bring this into clinical practice as you started to describe to us. What was it like for your site, for Northwestern, to become a qualified treatment center? And what does the process look like for other institutions that might be pursuing this?
Yeah, well, it's not a simple process. It takes an army to move this forward at an institution. I see most of my patients actually all my patients at Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago. So I started with them, although we're also working with our adult hospital where I'm also the chair of the department. It took many months and many people. We are experienced with gene therapy at the institution. We were able to tap into that to move forward all the boxes that had to be checked off to make this happen. It's huge with respect to regulatory. We're following these patients carefully, but there were so many individuals from the designating all the surgeons who would be involved and their teams, to the teams that would be involved in figuring out what the budget needed to be, how we could move this forward from a logistical standpoint, meshing with a team that comes from the company Abeona that makes this, so that we're in sync with them in terms of picking dates, moving forward individuals, these kinds of things. So it took several months of all hands on board to move forward. Ours was the first to open up and be available to be able to do these procedures. And it's been a learning curve. So just getting people into the system, there is a way that Abeona has a facilitated way to just through a phone call, get things going. There are a lot of people working on it, so it's not a lot of burden for families. But of course, it has to be approved by the insurance, whatever their insurance might be. And there are many steps of that approval process where there are several aspects that have to be serially approved in order to move things forward. And then, of course, it has to be scheduled. I think the company will only still do one at a time right now, because all attention has to be paid to making sure that individual's cells are grown effectively, get the gene, can then be expanded and get to the right place to be put on the individual who's getting the surgery.
Thank you, Dr. Pollard. And for individuals living with EB and families wondering if ZEVASKYN may be a fit for them, how do you go about having that conversation and ultimately determining if somebody may be a candidate?
Well, I will tell you that for the first ones we did, we really took people who had had their skin basically missing in places for a long time. The latest one I did, for example, who's now about 10 days out, he was missing skin in the area we grafted for 15 years. So, I mean, you can imagine how terribly painful that can be. And yet we put the credit card size patches on most of that large chest area and shoulder area. That was a major part of that. So it's really something that we want to start with those who are having the greatest burden. And I think that's those who have areas that are missing. And it doesn't all have to be in one place. You can have multiple places. But we have also done some, and as young as 5 years of age for one, where the skin was opening and closing and opening and closing. That's a huge burden as well. So of our 5 patients, 3 had large open areas that just never were closing for years. And 2 others were opening and closing, opening and closing. The oldest we've done is 25 years because of the constraints of our hospital. The adult hospital will be able to do some who are older, obviously 26 and above. But it's been a process, and we've learned at every step. We've had a problem here, we've solved it. We've had a problem here, we've solved it. So I think there's something to be said for having experience with doing these. I'm happy to talk about the surgery itself and what we've learned as well, if you'd like. But it is a process, and we have largely selected the ones who were more open to start with. And I think that's what I'd like to do for a while. But you can imagine if this is something that works, that it could be used for those even with smaller or preventive, taking things off and never blistering in these sites that would recurrently blister. The other thing that I will mention in terms of choosing are 2 things. One is it's really got to be a patient, and if it's a child, a family that's committed to go through the process, which is not easy. So you have a surgery where you're obviously not feeling anything, but then you're in the hospital, you have to be immobilized for a while. For our young child who was 5, we put them in the pediatric intensive care unit where they were really heavily sedated for days to facilitate that immobilization. There's also pain. And actually, we've been pleasantly surprised at how little extra pain meds our patients have needed. Maybe that's just the threshold is a bit different, but they barely ask for anything more than standard pain medications and not heavy duty. So just a family that's committed to that, patient who's committed to go through this process of healing over really the first week or so in the hospital, and then still another many weeks where they have to limit their activity and try to make sure that all goes well. The other thing is where the lesions are. And as you can imagine, because the patients have to be immobilized, they have to be sleeping somehow. They can't sleep on the area where the grafts were done. So it has to be thoughtfully considered. For example, you can do the whole anterior trunk, and maybe you can do the knees because that's on one side. You could do the back, but you have to lie on a side to have that done. You can't be sleeping and spending all your time face down, I would think. I know, Lara, you had that done. You can comment about that more. So we have to think carefully about the logistics of doing the procedure to get the most important areas, but the ones that are likely to heal. And we've actually chosen areas that are not so much, a lot of people, for example, would like their buttock done, right? That's a little bit more difficult. And so we haven't necessarily started with that. We'd say, well, let's see how things go. And then we'll consider that maybe for the second time, because that's going to be a little bit more challenging logistically. So those are some of the things that we think about when we're counseling and thinking about who would be a good candidate.
That's very helpful, Dr. Poller. I'm going to take 2 questions for you from the chat and a third one, and I'll try to put them in thematic order in the interest of time. But one question was specifically around the youngest patient that you've treated at CHOP, and you may or may not be able to answer that. But if you're not, maybe thinking, or helping the group think through how is that decision made? You mentioned as young as 5. is sort of the first question. The second question is around, how can ZEVASKYN work in concert with the other two approved treatments for EB, if at all? And then the third, sort of scaling up slightly, we did get a question on, has there been contemplation from you or maybe our partners at Abeona on, could this be applicable in other rare diseases beyond EB? So sort
Yeah,
of.
I'll try to keep those straight. I may have to ask you again.
Yeah,
Uh,
no problem.
the 5-year-old is a patient that was not my patient. She's from Milwaukee. I'm, for everybody, I'm in Chicago, not at CHOP, Michael. Although Marissa is on.
Sorry, the question was from Chop.
Was from, that was from Marissa. Okay. So the 5-year-old,
For me.
hi, Marissa. So the 5-year-old was not my patient, somebody from Milwaukee. So that was a little unusual because most of the patients I've known for years, often since shortly after they were born, and have this long-term rapport with the parents. So that was a situation where I had to get to know the family and understand that they could deal with the challenges of getting this grafting procedure. So that was the first thing for me. And I do want to mention that because not everybody is somebody that I necessarily know. Secondly, it was a situation where I was impressed that this girl could handle the grafting, that the parents could handle all of this, and that they really understood, in this case, that it wasn't a large area that had been sitting there for years. Nothing worked, but instead areas that were coming and going and coming and going. And they just wanted to really take the risk, because there's always the risk that you put on a graft and it doesn't take. And when you've taken off skin to be able to make this happen, which you have to do, there's always the risk that it'll make it worse. So it's one thing if there's nothing there. In this little girl, it was coming, going. And we were doing places like the knees and some of these areas on the extremities, in particular on the foot, that were just areas that just kept becoming denuded, just kept becoming open wounds, not necessarily on the day of the surgery. And so that was more difficult for me to be thinking about in a 5-year-old. But I was impressed enough that this family had such a handle on it that we moved forward. Now, the next question was how to juggle it with other medicines. And, you're not doing everything at the same time, number one. Down the road, the whole area treated may not come back in. We certainly for months are not going to introduce anything else to the areas that are treated, because we don't want anything to interfere with the possibility of the cells taking and doing well. But there are plenty of other areas that we are still treating with the Vyjuvek or with the Filsuvezi, the other products that are out there. So as I see it, all of these treatments are complementary, and we need to do everything we possibly can to try to encourage healing and make these individuals going through the ZEVASKYN process comfortable, and that includes continuing treatment on other areas. And then I think your last question was about, could this be applied to other things? Well, I think the beauty of EB, so to speak, for this procedure is that it's a blistering process. So you've already know areas of loss. You don't really have to be taking off areas of skin that at least haven't blistered previously. So the first extension, I would think, would be to other forms of EB, because all could benefit from this, but particularly junctional forms of EB I would think would be the next step. Now, is there a role for considering this for other skin disorders where there's not a blistering process? For example, scaling disorders that are very uncomfortable, very problematic functionally, with inflammation that itches and is painful as well. And the answer is maybe. I would think, though, it would have to be in a fairly localized area that creates enough burden that it's worth having the risk of taking off skin and then putting on grafts. So we'll certainly want to get lots of experience with EB before this moves to other skin problems where skin could be replaced and lead to benefit.
That's very helpful, Dr. Pollard. I have two questions from the chat and then sort of one final one for today, and then we will have time for more in the Q&A. But from my friend Trisha, she's asking specifically about hands. Can grafting be used in hand correction surgery?
Yeah. Well, I should mention right now that I would think that would be a goal. It's something we've certainly talked about. Wouldn't that be great to go through this procedure and not have to have a fusion again over time? The issue right now is that these come in a set size. Okay. So they are the size of a credit card. They come sutured to a dressing, and then you put it on with the graft side facing the skin and the dressing facing the other dressings that then get applied on top of it. And they're very specific instructions on how to apply these, how to dress them, etc. I asked the very first time I did one, it was like, for two reasons. One is you got to make something that's the right shape. So if you've got something that's a little smaller here or whatever, we cannot adapt that. It's a rectangle, and it has to be cut out to the size of the rectangle and a tiny bit beyond, because you also cannot overlap it on skin. So that was my very question. How can we take these things, cut them to the shape we want? And that would be applicable whether we have smaller wounds or whether we have hand surgery to be done, or a contracture, which is where you've had such scarring that, for example, your ankle is distorted and you can potentially not walk because of that. But a release procedure, how do we get that to heal? So that's another example. And I know the company is working on that now. They have some preliminary, they're doing more work to try to see if they can do that first. And then how would be the best way for the surgeon to be able to do that. So just something that we've all thought about, and I think in the future that will come.
That's very helpful, Dr. Poller. And I am seeing Vish, the best person to speak. We just asked to comment on manufacturing output. So our pleasure, Vish, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Dr. Poller. I just wanted to add one more thing, because Dr. Poller touched on our manufacturing. We can do one at a time. It's true that we can receive one biopsy on a given date, but in a given month, we can stagger and receive multiple biopsies, up to 6 right now. And by the year end, we're ramping it up to 10. So there is opportunity for more and more patients to also, avail of this treatment. I just wanted to clarify that, but amazing event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vish. And that's actually a good segue to my last, albeit I won't give you 3, Dr. Poller, but maybe combining 2 questions to bring us home. But Vish, you brought up an important point, which is those that may be interested. The 2 parts, Dr. Poller, regarding access. What is the best way for a patient to get to the right QTC site and speak to somebody about ZEVASKYN? Question 1. And then question 2, I joined EBRP almost 10 years ago, and you were one of the first clinicians I met, and you've spent a career dedicated to service of this community and results for this community and progress and ultimately hope for this community. So, what does this personally mean to you as somebody that's worked in the space? So, hopefully easier question, how do patients get access to speaking to the right QTC site? And then second question, what does this really mean to you?
Yeah, well, the first one's an easy one because, look at that. There's a QR code right there. There's a hotline. You could just take a picture of the QR code and get in touch. And what they will do is they will match you with a site that's easiest for you. Remember, you're going to be in the hospital for a while, and so you want to be close to home, or at least close to family. And it may be that you prefer to be someplace where you have family who can be helping you if it's not in your own town. But these are places that are now approved to move forward, and potentially more coming. So just to let you know about that. For me, I get very, very excited with all the research that's going on. Tremendously thrilled when the FDA really started understanding how serious EB is, started fast tracking things, started bringing out medications. I will say of all the rare skin diseases, EB's so far ahead with 3, but I hope that that turns into 6 and 12 and more in the future as this evolves and we have more and more options for the treatment and particularly options for cure. So this is really the first one though where we don't have to once a week be putting a medication on. It's really truly gene corrective, and that's such a huge step for EB. Really excited about this, looking forward to seeing how all these patients who are going to get treated will do over the next year, and then what more we can do with it based on what we learn from these results. And it is a learning process. I'll say that once more. For example, we learned how to minimize bleeding in the operating room, and that was a huge process for us. We learned the best way to be counseling about what to expect with the dressings falling off, things like that. And we've changed some processes as a result of learning how to do things. So very excited, looking forward to more to come, more patients, more experience, and more products as well in the future. It's a wonderful wave of research that's being done right now to support EB.
Thank you, Dr. Pollard. The progress to date would not be possible without you, and the progress ahead. We share the vision from 3 to 6 to 12, and more treatments will not be possible without you. So thank you for your time today. Thank you, Vish, and the Abeona team as well to share this innovation. A theme for today, and I think for all of us in the community, has been resiliency and perseverance and innovation. And it sounds like we've employed this on this call to get Emily on the line. I know there's been some tech challenges, but we've had bigger challenges put on the road in front of us that we've overcome. So it sounds like this one we've overcome. If I'm right, Allison, we have a way for Emily to join us.
Hey guys, I'm here if you can hear me, and I'm so sorry about this technical difficulty today, but I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Emily, and we will gladly pass it to you. As mentioned earlier, Emily is an amazing, amazing person. She is an artist, she is an advocate, and quite frankly, an ambassador across the planet. We got a chance to connect, quite a ways from here in São Paulo, Brazil, at the EB conference in January. So Emily also travels the world to advocate for this community. So without further ado, very happy to pass it over to you, Emily.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that warm welcome. And yeah, I'm so bummed that I missed the beginning of the meeting, but I'm so glad that you guys record all the town halls. So I'll definitely be tuning into those online when you post it. But yeah, so thanks for that intro. A bit about me is I was born and raised in Toronto, but I now live in the east coast of Canada in Moncton, New Brunswick with my family. When I was only a few hours old, my mom was rubbing my finger when she noticed a blister appear. And a few days later, I was diagnosed with EB, and then later with genetic testing with the form dominant dystrophic. It mainly affects my jointed areas like my knees and elbows, hands and feet, although it also affects my mouth, my throat, and random areas. If you can please switch to the next slide, and also bear with me because I can't actually see anything in the meeting right now. From a young age, I got involved with my local DEBRA and formed lifelong friendships. I studied art and design at OCAD University, and for my thesis project, I worked with the EB community to design more fashionable bandage covers. This experience really reunited my love for the EB community. Next slide, please. I am now a board member at DEBRA Canada and a DEBRA International Youth Council leader. I'm also passionate about sharing my experience with EB in pregnancy and birth and advocating for women's health. Next slide, please. I'm always amazed by all the creatives in the EB community. There is a photo of the Kaleidoscope Gala. There was an organization called Mia Thrives that I worked for 5 years as the creative director. We hosted a gala celebrating 12 artists with EB. It was a very special celebration, celebrating the arts and shining a light on the many talents in the EB community. Next slide, please. Growing up, I wasn't able to participate in sports and many physical activities, but instead I focused my energy on visual arts. When Mia Thrives closed its doors, I took a leap of faith to pursue painting full-time. I've made some adaptations to make my home studio work for me, like sheepskin covers on my chair and various tools to help me open paint bottles so I can create independently. I'm now specializing in commission paintings, abstract florals, and murals. I have exhibited my work in galleries in both group and solo exhibits. Next slide, please. I was so thrilled when I heard about the EBRP art book to celebrate all the artist talent in the EB community. It's also such a powerful tool of self-expression for those living with EB. I'm so honored to be one of the artists featured alongside 30 other individuals living and thriving with EB. So thank you so much for listening, and I would be happy to answer any questions now.
Thank you so much, Emily, and we're happy you figured out a way to join, which is nothing compared to what you overcome on a daily basis. So just thank you. We are an admirer of you, and we long have been, and also our friends at Deborah Canada. For those that may not know, founded by Dave and Fran Molinaro, we think about Deanna all the time, and I know she was a very close friend of yours, Emily. So just thank you for your important work. And last I checked, Canada has a 99% probability of advancing to the next round of the World Cup. So we're hoping our friends up north advance as well, so we can still continue to cheer you on. So thank you so much for your time, Emily. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. I'm going to jump into the Q&A, and the first question that we got, I think Dr. Poller and Laura and Emily, probably, you're all qualified to answer from different angles, but it actually came from a grandparent, and they said, what would their question was top 3 one-sentence pieces of advice for grandparents of a newborn baby with dystrophic EB. Maybe I'll just generalize it a bit and say any advice you would offer to grandparents of a newborn grandchild with dystrophic EB.
That is such a good question. I think one of the best things is to just let them figure things out on their own, let them figure out their own limits, because I think it can be so nerve-wracking. I don't really remember much from when I was that age, but I know it was so stressful for my parents and grandparents to watch me do things like learn how to crawl and walk because they were so scared of me getting hurt. But I think just kind of being brave and giving them some space for them to figure it out, and also to just support their interests, whatever they may be, and then to help them with creative problem solving so that they can pursue those interests. Because I feel often with EB, you can do things, but it just might look a little differently. So I feel it just takes a lot of creative thinking to sometimes make those things happen.
Thank you, Emily. Dr. Poller or Laura?
Well, I will just say I am a grandmother, not of EB, but I think as with any grandmother, the important thing is not to tell everybody what to do. I think it's fine to be very helpful, and I think that's what's most important, is to be open in your help, to offer to do anything, to really try to help. We all know that EB is a huge time burden, a financial burden. So I think grandparents can be helpful in being that extra set of hands to help with dressing changes, being available, and very, very importantly, as you just heard, not telling the parents what to do I'm sure grandma will be all over the internet and all over the literature and have all kinds of things to say, but you have to zip your lip and hold the tongue. Um, but I do think just doing everything to help time-wise, financially, and with strong support.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback a little bit off of both of them. Allowing the child just to be the child and giving the child the freedom and you can provide some sort of a safety net in the house, but make EB as little a part of their day as possible because they want to do other things. They don't want to be focused on EB all day long. And so the more they get to explore and the more they get to do outside of that and feel accomplished in things, will really help them a lot more mentally, I think.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Because I have learned about FOMO, fear of missing out. I think one of the things that we see with someone who has a chronic disease is that there's a lot of attention to that individual and maybe not always the positive attention. I think one of the most important things that a grandparent could do was to make sure that even time is given to everyone. Even time in a fun way is given to the individual with EB. Even time is given to the siblings, because the whole family needs to be considered in thinking about the dynamics and the approach of the grandparent.
That's a great point, Dr. Poller. I think about my own wife, whose sister had pediatric leukemia, and where I used to work for a long time, the Hole in the Wall Gang Camp actually had sessions for siblings and programming for siblings. So that's a really important point and spoken like a great grandmother as well as an EB clinician. So thank you for that. This next question is for Laura and Emily, although I might expand it a little bit to include you, Dr. Poller, but starting with Laura and Emily, the question is, how do you find the motivation to create art, to be a special educator, to be a parent on days when EB makes it really physically difficult to do so, or maybe even emotionally difficult? But that was the question we got, and would love to hear from you, Laura and Emily, and would expand to you, Dr. Poller, in a different way of days when it's really hard to continue to run a lab and continue to run clinical trials. Where do you guys find the motivation?
I think that having had to take a couple of leave of absences from work and not being able to go to work and not being able to participate in life, um, once I get back to it, I realize I don't want that to be taken away from me. And it's more of my mindset of I will do what I want to do, and I'm not going to let this take me out for very long. Maybe for a little while, but um, it's something that I have to keep going and keep doing just because it's not going to win.
Hmm. Thank you, Laura. Emily?
Yeah, so when I started pursuing art full time, I feel like I would feel so guilty on the days where I didn't create anything. But now I'm trying to kind of listen to my body more and really rest when I need it. And I find that like taking care of myself like that um, makes my art time even more productive, even if it ends up being less hours. I've noticed that when I'm well rested and taking good care of myself, like focus on eating healthy and taking care of my skin, I get less skin infections. And that means I'm on antibiotics less and I end up just feeling better and then feeling more inspired to create. So I feel like for me, it's just kind of finding more of a balance with my time and prioritizing taking care of myself so that I'm in a good place to then focus on my work.
Thank you, Emily. And before I go to Dr. Poller, I'm going to combine a question. People want to know where they can get your art, purchase your art, see your art.
So I have a website, and so it's just my name, www.emilyborosrausch.com, and you can also find me on Instagram and Facebook through my name.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we'll be sure to share that website as well so everybody has the correct spelling. And to you, Dr. Poller, on those tough days, different perspective. But it is hard work, and the process of scientific discovery comes in ebbs and flows, and the hypothesis being correct or incorrect, how do you find the motivation?
I don't know. I never think about it uh, because I love what I do. And I think part of it is research. Research is not not something where you can be guaranteed success. I would say we have many more failures than we do successes when we're creating hypotheses and testing them in the lab and even in clinical research too. I can tell you all the times I've tried something and it hasn't worked. And it's disappointing, but you just move on. I'm very, very lucky because I'm in a field that I absolutely made the right choice a few decades ago and love everything I do and have the pleasure of doing many different things so I can always jump from one to another. I think that keeps me going quite a bit.
Well, thank you, Dr. Poller. And I would share that sentiment of it being a profound honor and duty to serve and work on behalf of this community, which is the problem with me hosting these town halls because they always go over because I could talk to you all day. So I will try not to go too over and ask you all one final question and then bring us home. But one of my favorite things about the town halls is the different and diversified perspectives that we try to bring in, and certainly from the presenters and the speakers, but all of those on the line. And I look around at the faces and names, and we have every stakeholder represented, right? From biotech and pharma to clinicians and researchers to philanthropists supporting the work to the True North, individuals living with EB and their families. Dr. Poller, Laura, and Emily, you guys represent, really diversified but unique perspectives of a researcher and a clinician with a career committed to the space. Somebody who's participated in ZEVASKYN clinical trials, but is also a parent now and an advocate, and Emily, an artist and an advocate, and also a parent. I guess the closing question kind of to you all three, a perspective, a perspective question. How have you seen from your unique lens the community evolve? And that can be scientifically or medically or just the community at large. And what is your greatest hope for the next 5 years in this community?
Well, I guess I can start because I'm not living it in the same way others are, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the others. But for me, it's really been a journey. I started my career many, many years ago just wanting to do work in genetics. I didn't know I'd land in skin genetics, but I was just going in that direction at a time when our knowledge was so primitive. And I did my fellowship work actually studying EB at a time when we were so far from where we are now. I can't even tell you. So I've really had the pleasure of watching science move forward to the point where we really can now think about cure. I think what we're talking about today is a profound step, but just the first step. I see new technologies coming out. I see so many wonderful ideas and scientists who are engaged in this kind of work, and in part thanks to the funding that's available through EBRP. So I'm very, very hopeful for the future. I want to remind people that things take years to move forward. We often think about a 10-year journey from the time it starts in testing to the time something can be available. Fortunately, a little fast tracking with EB, but nevertheless, over the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see such a revolution that I'm very, very comfortable that we are going to have cures some way or another for this disease.
Thank you. I can't imagine a more hopeful statement, Dr. Power. So thank you. And you say many, many years, but I'm getting some side text and messages that people can't believe that you're a grandmother. So consider that a compliment. Laura and Emily, either of you perspective on sort of your journey in this community and what you're hopeful for the future.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that, because I feel like I also feel so hopeful for the future and for cures and treatments for EB. But kind of for like the short term, I feel like something that I'm also feeling hopeful about is with social media now and so many people having access to internet, it's kind of amazing how we can build such an online community to help support individuals living with EB globally, and to really like focus on also like mental health support, because there's so many people that feel so isolated and alone, and I feel like coming together, even just virtually, like through the Denver International Youth Council, has really brought me so much hope and friendships. And I'm excited to just see where it goes and hopefully continue the work and hopefully have more in-person meetings as well. But yeah, I really hope that that movement keeps growing.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah, and I take the perspective, of course, as a patient, but I think also as a parent, um, the mindset of having a choice now, whereas before there was just zero choices and you just kept going, you just kept dressing the wounds. Having a choice now is just a huge breath of fresh air, really, that breathes life into this community, I think. And, the work that clinicians are doing, the doctors, the researchers, we're very good examples of why it needs to continue and why we need them to continue.
Well said. Thank you, all three. If the audience can join me with a digital clap or just an actual clap to thank Dr. Poller, Laura, and Emily. Thank you so much for your perspectives, your honesty, the knowledge that you dropped, as my kids would say, on us all today, and really your time. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'd also like to thank Vish and the Abiona team for your work. What you hear Dr. Poller and Laura talk about. As you said, Dr. Poller, this is a huge innovative step, and it takes the commitment of companies that are going to see that through, but also put patients and families first. And so, Vish and your team, I just want to thank you guys for that. Just to round the bases, so to speak, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We talked a lot about the art book, and thank you again to our partner Abiona for the inspiration and support to make that happen. It's called Wings of Resilience Community Art Book. I know Allison, thank you for dropping the link in the chat, but it's just ebresearch.org/artbook. You can view it. You can order yourself a copy. Believe it or not, we celebrated one of many anniversaries last Friday, which it was a year since we debuted the documentary Matter of Time at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York. 50 movie theaters later, sold out theaters across the country and the world. It launched on Netflix in February and will be on the platform for another year and a half. But to keep the momentum going, we've got an initiative called Matter of Miles that you can join. Miles can mean many things. You can run it, you can walk it, you can crawl it, you can wheel it, you can bike it. So there's lots of ways to participate and get the message and word out. You can do it from anywhere in the world. We just announced this morning we'll have a gathering and a celebration in New York on November 11th, which is a Wednesday. You are all invited to join us there in New York if you are able to make it. So we send out the save the date, more details to come, but certainly be in touch with us with any questions. In the meantime, and you heard Dr. Poller talk about the most important thing that we do, which is fund research. And so thank you, Dr. Poller, for being part of that esteemed group of clinicians and scientists and researchers and industry professionals that make up our independent scientific advisory board to guide us on that research funding. They have completed their extremely difficult job, Dr. Poller, because we got the largest cycle by almost double of submissions and projects and dollar amount. So the job, which is volunteer for Dr. Poller, you never want to give your volunteers too much work and they don't want to do it anymore, but we certainly push them to the brink of the volume of projects that we reviewed. So their process is done. And in the next couple of weeks, we'll be announcing that first research funding cycle of the year, which, as always, we will promptly communicate to the community. So with that, I just wanted to thank again our speakers. Thank you to each of you for joining us. As you know, you don't have to miss us too much because you can reach out anytime to us at info@ebresearch.org or on socials. If your question didn't get answered, please send that to us. If it's for Laura, if it's for Emily, it's for Dr. Poller, if it's for Abiona, we will make sure that gets to the right place. So don't be shy, as we say, reach out to us with anything and everything. And if you don't do that, we will see you in 1 month for the next town hall. So thank you, everybody, and we will see you very soon.